social,
How do we imagine the unimaginable? If we're asked to think of an object, say, a yellow tulip, a picture immediately forms in our mind's eye. But what if we try to imagine a concept such as the square root of negative number?
Yet it is precisely in observing the intertwinings of success and failure that Chasing the Flame makes its greatest mark with piercing insight and relentless logic. It reveals the pitfalls of international politics and details an intricate struggle between individual and institution. It haunts us with the poignant truth that even a great man can do only so much to reinvent the world.
This is a new, accessible, and engaging textbook written by academics who also work as consultants with organizations undergoing change. It offers a unique combination of rigorous theoretical exploration together with practical insights from working with those who are actually responsible for managing change.
But on May 3rd, a couple of weeks later, Lincoln issued an executive order calling for 43,000 three-year volunteers for the Army and also increasing the size of the regular Army and Navy by 40,000 men. Both these actions were in apparent violation of the Constitution.
Business school admissions officers said the new drive to attract younger students was in part the result of a realization that they had inadvertently limited their applicant pool by requiring several years' work experience. Talented students who might otherwise have gone to business school instead opted for a law or policy degree because they were intimidated by the expectation of work experience.
Unlike the United Kingdom, which has taken a relatively restrictive approach to the possession of arms, the United States has taken a more lenient approach. In the United States, three models have evolved regarding the interpretation of the meaning of the right to bear and keep arms as delineated in the Second Amendment. Trade unions originated in Europe during the Industrial Revolution. Because of the machinery that had become commonplace, skilled labor became less in demand, so employers had nearly all of the bargaining power. Employers mistreated the workers and paid them too little for the work they did. Trade unions were organized that would help in the improvement of working conditions.
Unions take the power out of the employer's hands on many issues. There are examples of cases where workers were engaging in sexual or racial harassment, but were protected by their unions and allowed to keep their jobs. Poor workers and excellent workers often receive the same pay and raises, giving no reason for a person to work harder than necessary at their job.
How quickly is the world's population growing? In the United States and other developed countries, the current growth rate is very low. In most developing countries, the human population is growing at a rate of 3% per second. Because of this bustling growth rate, the human population is well on its way to reaching 9 billion within the lifetime.
How quickly this occurs depends on the dynamics of fertility, mortality, and overseas migration, while a moderate pace of demographic change allows for gradual adjustment of the economy and policies to the changing population demographics. Rapid changes are more difficult to manage. As a result, governments and society as a whole may need to take actions to address these issues.
Participating regularly in physical activity has been shown to benefit an individual's health and well-being. Regular physical activity is important in reducing the risk of chronic diseases, such as heart disease and stroke, obesity, diabetes, and some forms of cancer. The National Physical Activity Guidelines for adults recommends at least 30 minutes of moderate intensity physical activity, preferably every day of the week, to obtain health benefits. History is selective. What history books tell us about the past is not everything that happened. But what historians have selected, they cannot put in everything. Choices have to be made. Choices must similarly be made about which aspects of the past should be formally taught to the next generation in the shape of school history lessons.
Tissues are grouped together in the body to form organs. These include the brain, heart, lungs, kidneys, and liver. Each body organ has a specific shape and is made up of different types of tissue that work together. For example, the heart consists mainly of a specialized type of muscle tissue, which contracts rhythmically to provide the heart's pumping action.
When countries assess their annual carbon emissions, they count up their cars and power stations. But bushfires are not included, presumably, because they are deemed to be events beyond human control. In Australia, Victoria alone sees several 100,000 hectares burn each year in both 2004, and more recently, the figure has been over 1 million hectares. Researchers think that longer distance flyers, such as the American golden plover and the white-rumped sandpiper, picked up the spores while lining their nests. Then, when the birds arrive in new places, they molt, leaving behind the feathers and their precious cargo to start growing again at the other end of the world. We all know about bacteria, viruses, and microscopic protozoa. We can watch the way that these tiny agents move into our bodies and damage our organs. We have a growing understanding of how our body mounts defensive strategies that fight off these invaders, and they've built some clever chemical that can help mount an assault on these biovillains.
Scientists have recommended actions the government of Madagascar's recently elected president, Endry, should take to turn around the precipitous decline of biodiversity and help put Madagascar on a trajectory towards sustainable growth. Madagascar's protected areas, some of the most important for biodiversity in the world, have suffered terribly in recent years from illegal mining, logging, and collection of threatened species for the pet trade.
Food is one of the most important things you'll ever buy. And yet most people never bother to think about their food and where it comes from. People spend a lot more time worrying about what kind of blue jeans to wear, what kind of video games to play, what kind of computers to buy.
The life of a hunter-gatherer is indeed, as Thomas Hobbes said of the state of nature, solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short, in some respects, to be sure. Wandering through the jungle bagging monkeys may be preferable to the hard slog of subsistence, agriculture.
Investigators also compared those microbes with those living in 52 other soil samples taken from all around the planet. The park had organisms that also exist in deserts, frozen tundra, forests, rainforests, and prairies. Antarctica was the only area that had microbes that did not overlap with those found in Central Park. Only a small percentage of the park's microbes were found to be already listed in databases.
University of Adelaide researchers have uncovered fundamental new information about the malting characteristics of barley grains. They say their finding could pave the way to more stable brewing processes or new malts for craft brewers. Published in the Nature publication Scientific Reports, the researchers discovered a new link between one of the key enzymes involved in malt production for brewing and a specific tissue layer within the barley grain.
To some extent, attendance at cultural venues and events is influenced by a person's age and the composition of the household in which they live. For example, those people in households with dependent children were more likely to visit zoological parks and aquariums than people living in single-person households. Along with customary classes on subjects such as finance, accounting, and marketing, today's MBA students are enrolling on courses for environmental policy and stewardship. Indeed, more than half of business schools require a course in environmental sustainability or corporate social responsibility, according to a survey of 91 U.S. business schools published in October 2005.
Traditional divisions of domestic work are understood to persist because of the strong association of the home with femininity and paid work with masculinity. To challenge who does what in the home is arguably equivalent to challenging what it is to be a woman or a man.
The United States is at present the world's market for motor cars and trucks. An agent for the U.S. Bureau of Foreign and Domestic Commerce reports a prosperous condition of affairs prevailing in Japan, which is buying more automobiles, especially large cars, than ever before. Introvert, or those of us with introverted tendencies, tends to recharge by spending time alone. They lose energy from being around people for long periods of time, particularly large crowds. Extroverts, on the other hand, gain energy from other people. Extroverts actually find their energy is sapped when they spend too much time alone. They recharge by being